Hi everybody. It's Friday afternoon. It is actually a beautiful afternoon. It's a little warm, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm gonna invite a few of my friends that might be able to join us also. And for those of you that are joining me for the first time, I invite your comments. I invite some suggestions for future content. I'm always happy to share my research. I'm always happy to share some links for you. Hi, Chris. Happy Friday afternoon. Yes. So, welcome. And for those of you that are joining me live, or if you're joining on the replay, especially, I love your comments. I do follow up, and I always have good resources for you. So please join in and comment and share on the replay, because we have so much information. And the comments that I'm getting, I really enjoy that, and it helps me kind of understand some of the things that are going on out there. And today is another one. I really started looking at this because of some research that I had done some time ago about the analysis of paralysis. Now, you and I probably know people like that who really have difficulty making a decision. It could be difficulty making a small decision, or it could be difficulty making a much bigger decision. So I got kind of curious about it, and I dug a little deeper, and I thought, well, how does that work when we're in quarantine? What happens to that thought process? How do we deal with all those decisions when everything has changed? So I don't know about you, but for me, the reality of it, I didn't understand. It looked like it might be an opportunity to do more things, to do some really good things, maybe even do some things that I had been putting off for a while. But for an awful lot of people, that's the way that it started, and then it became something else entirely. And that's what I'm going to share with you a little bit today. And this information is coming from the American Mental Health Society and also Psychology Today. But this situation called analysis paralysis, as you can guess, can be quite serious. It can be debilitating. So I'm going to do two things today. I'm going to share a little bit about what has really happened to us in this process during quarantine. And then I'm going to give you a few little tips on how to recognize it and maybe move past it. So share with me maybe what you all might have done. I started out thinking, wow, I have extra time on my hands. Hi, guys. And I can really do some things that maybe I've been putting off for a while. Most of you know that I have a business. And my business has always been an e-commerce online business, but I have also known that there's a lot of tools, hi Allison, that I could learn more about and how to use them in a better way. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with my time. My husband had some projects that he wanted to do. I know people that really wanted to do some personal development. There are lots of options for us as we suddenly looked around and saw that we might have a blessing, a little more time to do some of those things that we really have been procrastinating about. Well, here's the truth of what's happened. It hasn't really happened all the way that we thought it would, and it has become a pandemic procrastination. Yes. And here's a typical scenario. When it first started, many of us said, wow, this is great. I'm going to do this, 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 and this. I'm a person who likes to be busy anyway, so I thought it was an opportunity to really be busy. Time off from our normal activities gave us that time. But the next part of that is for us to really figure out ways to really utilize that time. And for a lot of people, that wasn't easy to do. We were dealing with all the extra things of quarantine and pandemic and COVID-19 that were rolling around in our minds, at the same time trying to take the rest of our time and energy and doing something positive. So for many, many people, that has caused a different kind of anxiety. They started guilting themselves like, I'm not doing all that I can do. So the list and the anxiety became more and more difficult to handle. And at the same time, we're talking about things we need to do. We need to be walking and exercising, and we need to do meal prep and a lot of things like that that some people were thinking about for the very first time. So the to-do list, rather than becoming an organizational tool, became a really daunting challenge in the face of a global pandemic going on outside our doors. So for a lot of people, they weren't getting anything done. So what does that do? Okay, that's all the guilt. So I don't know how that time has turned out for you, but when that has happened, that is the classic decision paralysis, because we cannot take the steps. We cannot begin to move forward to really make those decisions that turn in to the real productive and gratifying part of that process. And for many people, everyday life, instead of becoming a little easier, actually started becoming a little more difficult. So in the research, they made some really good observations. I'm a person who's always made lists. That's one suggestion. Journaling is another one, so that you can organize these thoughts in a way that reduces the anxiety. Because one of the things that we've talked so much about during this pandemic is anxiety. Anxiety in and of itself can actually threaten our immune system. So you've got to get this limitation and these stresses out of your head and put them someplace else where they're going to be more productive. And a list or a journal or a daily schedule, whatever you want to call it, can really be a very helpful tool. Sometimes we get so buried in that we don't even understand what the possibilities are. Now, I know people, and hello, they're on today, that undertook really big projects. My husband was one of them. And what has ended up being a lot of activity for him has ended up being a lot of stress for me. So it's a trade-off. But he knew, and I understood, and I agreed with that idea of taking this time. Now, initially, we didn't know how much time that was going to be. Who knew it was going to be 6, 7, 8 months or longer? So we were putting out a plan with no way to really understand what the boundaries were. And so I want to share with you now a few little tips on how to recognize that this is going on in your life and how to really maybe capture that and turn it around and making it into something useful. Number one is learning how to recognize it. If you are having difficulty making decisions on very small things, then this is a classic example of something much bigger going on. And I have friends like that. It's very difficult to plan where to go to lunch. And that's symptomatic of a bigger challenge in making larger decisions. So recognize that it exists and try to narrow it down into a shorter period of time with less decisions in the process. That will help eliminate the overwhelming feeling. Stop overthinking it. We all do that. And we had so many unknowns in the beginning of this pandemic. Who wasn't overthinking? I mean, things like, am I going to be able to buy toilet paper and disinfectant and hand sanitizer today? Do I wear a mask? Do I have enough masks? So there was an extra layer on this decision-making thing that for those people who struggle with that became very, very hard. Another little tip here is to try to make small choices in a very short period of time. There's a great philosophy from Mel Robbins. It's called the 5-second decision. The theory is that follow your instinct, make the decision, and move on. And it's a great way to learn how to process and make the decision and act on it. Another little tip here. Are you worried about people making a judgment decision about you based on the decision that you made? Put that away. They probably don't care, and it's only to your detriment if you're worried about that. So that decision making can really become a difficult thing to do. And that can work on your self-confidence. So this thing gets real complicated. Trust your instincts. Practice the acceptance of your decision. Now, if you just made a decision that costs a lot of money, that's a tough thing to swallow. But if you've just made a decision that might have been a little different than what you expected, then that's a different issue altogether. So I think that what you can do is take little steps, short decisions, quicker, understand the ramifications, act on it, and get comfortable with what you just decided. And those things can really, really help eliminate a lot of issues with this paralysis. Now, this paralysis, I just want to have a little side note here because we know people that deal with this. This is a real serious issue with people who suffer with ADD, ADHD, and autism. This is a much deeper issue than someone who just has a little bit of a problem making a decision, and they will tend to procrastinate the decision rather than making the decision and moving ahead. So that's a little bit more complicated issue. But the point today is this is a real situation. It's been compounded by quarantine and pandemic and a lot of the daily uncertainties. Hey, California, so glad you're jumping on. For those of you who do come on late, I do post these on YouTube, and they will be on my Facebook for a little while. So I'd invite you to join and invite you to share, because I'm really trying to share some real practical things on what we're all dealing with. And as I think mentally so many of us really expected that by now the end would be in sight, and I think there's still a lot of uncertainties about that. So the procrastination issue and the decision-making issue are exacerbated. They're more complicated than ever. It's not just an easy answer to say, oh, I have more time, therefore I can take on these extra things. It's not always that easy. There really needs to be a system in place to move ahead on that. So I want to always remind you when you are dealing with some issues to go to the valid resources. Don't believe the internet. There's just so much garbage out there on what you should be doing and what works. And I get so frustrated with it because, you know what, it really isn't doing anything for your underlying health. Just don't buy into it. And also my YouTube channel, subscribe. I always have great information on there. I'm coming up with something I'm going to post soon. It's really secrets to long life and a long healthy life, which are two different issues. So I want to invite you to go there too. Always ask questions. I'm happy to refer my resources. Always love to see everybody on live. But if you're coming on late, be sure to watch the replay on my Facebook and let me know your comments and shares. And I will not be in this location next Friday afternoon because I will be attending a virtual global convention. So we'll see if we can tune in on that and maybe share a little bit of that with you. But in the meantime, have a great weekend wherever you're coming in from. Try to join me next, I'll see what happens next week, but join me on my YouTube and on my Facebook and on my wellness page because I'm always sharing about healthy living. Bye, everybody. See you next time.